And today, Andrew Weissman, lead prosecutor in special counsel Robert Mueller's office, tweeted this. Seems like a distinct possibility that we will learn today that the Trump defense team has presented appeal to the Department of Justice regarding the January 6 charges. And then upon the rejection of that appeal, Jack Smith will seek the indictment tomorrow or Thursday at the latest in D.C. Andrew Weissman is also the co-host of the podcast Prosecuting Donald Trump. It's excellent, and he joins me now. So, Andrew, first of all, I have to ask you about that tweet. Is there anything you've learned since you tweeted that? Any new news you have to share with us?
No, but let me tell you about why I tweeted that. So we know that the grand jury sits on Tuesdays and Thursdays in D.C., and the case is going to be brought in D.C. So for people who are concerned that it might be in Florida again, that's not going to happen because the gravamen of the case is there.
There's cameras all over the place in D.C. looking for the courthouse.
I've been on the other side of that, so I know how that feels. And then the other thing is that before a case is actually indicted, the defense will have an opportunity to be heard by both Jack Smith and by people at Maine, what's called Maine Justice. And so that's really what I've been waiting for, is that piece, because once we have that piece, it's going to go forward.
So could it be happening and we just don't know about it? Is it typically very quiet?
You know, it could be, because this is one where it could be on the phone, it could be by Zoom, it could be we've seen it in person. So it could be any of those things. So it is possible that it's quiet. As you know, when things happen in Washington, it's hard to keep things quiet. So I thought we might get some word on that, but we haven't so far.
There's just a few reporters assigned to break news on this case out there. So I wanted to ask you about Bernie Kerik. And first, I just wanted to start, because I can't figure this out, why Trump waived attorney-client privilege here in this case. What would have motivated him to do that?
Yeah, so for Bernie Kerik is very close to Rudy Giuliani. He served as his chief investigator, and Rudy Giuliani was looking at whether there was fraud in the election. Bernie Kerik is also a felon, and he was pardoned by Donald Trump. So that's his history. On the issue of why he would waive, it's important. This is going to be super in the weeds, but here we go. So there are two types of privilege. There's attorney-client privilege, and then there's something called work product. Attorney-client is very sacrosanct. That's very hard to pierce. We've seen an example where there's crime fraud where it's pierced. Work product, much easier for the government to get at it. It's work product that was waived. And that's one where I think this is a little bit snow and winter, because although nowadays that's actually something, but when it used to be that there was a lot of snow and winter, that's one where I think Jack Smith would have been able to get that information anyway. So it's not much of a give there.
So don't overread into that. Okay, so Jack Smith, what is he looking to gain from all of these documents and Bernie Kerik coming to see his team in 2 weeks?
Yeah, so you know how we've heard that there were all sorts of people who told the former president that he lost? We've heard that he learned that from campaign people, from communications people, from
his own chief of staff was joking about the lack of voter fraud.
Exactly. So if you have Rudy Giuliani and his chief investigator, who are supposed to be looking for fraud, getting access to what they came up with is useful. So if they came up with nothing, that is a really useful fact if you're trying to show that Donald Trump had no good faith belief, that his mens rea was malignant, that it actually fits the criminal statute. And we have reason to think that that is exactly what these documents will show, because we have a little window in the Rudy Giuliani disbarment proceedings. You really can't make this up. But in the
all of this is a movie.
Yes. So in the Rudy Giuliani disbarment proceedings, not in New York, but in D.C., because he's facing not one but two disbarment proceedings, there they had Bernie Kerik documents, and what they said about them is they had no probative value. They looked at them and said there was nothing there at all.
So in human non-legal speak, does that mean these 2,000 documents?
I don't speak non-human.
Well, I'm working with you here. I'm luring you out of the legal hole.
Yes.
It means that these 2,000 documents, what they're looking for is that there might be no evidence at all. And we don't expect there to be voter fraud.
That's exactly right. They're looking to see if there's nothing. And obviously, if there is something there, if you're a prosecutor, you want to know that. So either way, it's something they want to know.
Now, these Mark Meadows text messages, of which there are many. And I just had one example there where it makes clear he does not buy this notion of voter fraud. What do you, I mean, how problematic is this for Mark Meadows? Is he in legal trouble here?
Yes.
Or, okay,
Yes.
how serious is his legal trouble?
So, you know, obviously from one document, that's not enough to build a whole criminal case, but you know, he was in a lot of meetings, and the reason that is a document that everyone's focusing on is he, for instance, was on the calls to Georgia saying there's fraud in the election. Well, if he is having these private messages, including with his own son, saying, you know, the fraud that we've seen is like one or two people, that's not fraud to change the results of the election. That's not the 11,000 votes that you need. So that is
there was even a joke about finding 10,000 additional votes with the White House lawyer.
Exactly. So that is, you know, if you are, just imagine if you're a prosecutor, you're thinking, good luck with the jury. You know, they're going to look at this and say, you knew exactly that you were misleading the state legislature here. And
how does Jack Smith, and we don't know what's in all of the documents, but how does Jack Smith use those text messages or Mark Meadows joking about this on a Trump case?
So obviously, if Mark Meadows is a defendant, if he is charged, those are what's called an admission. It's a direct admission. It could also come in under the rules of evidence as what's called a statement against interest, and potentially also as a co-conspirator statement. So there are a lot of different theories, but you're right to flag that, because some of the things that might be very damaging as to one defendant don't always come in as to every defendant. That's, by the way, I have a feeling we'll be talking about this more as the case goes forward.
I have a feeling we will. Andrew Weissman, I could take your law class. I'm waiting for a new podcast episode. I've been waiting for days now. Thank you so much for joining me here this evening.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. Just as there is no real precedent for Donald Trump's attempted coup in American history, there is also no real precedent for an ex-president facing multiple criminal indictments while he is seeking a second term in the White House. To me, it seems pretty obvious that the other 2024 Republican candidates might want to jump on these charges. You'd think that some of his opponents would want to try and maybe land a punch or two or five on the frontrunner, or maybe they would want to speak up simply because it's the right thing to do. Wouldn't that be nice? Since when has standing up for American democracy been a partisan thing anyway? Never really has been before the last couple of years. But Trump's opponents clearly do not see it that way. Here's what the guy who Trump's armed mob wanted to hang on January 6th had to say just yesterday.
The president's words were reckless that day. I had no right to overturn the election. But while his words were reckless, based on what I know, I'm not yet convinced that they were criminal. I really do hope it doesn't come to that, and also for the reason that I do think the Department of Justice has lost the confidence of the American people.
Again, I mean, it's worth restating that this is the guy that Trump's mob wanted to hang, and all he could muster was that it was reckless. So, okay, what about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis? The guy who most political strategists still say maybe there's a chance, a path of him taking out Trump. What did he have to say?
I don't think it serves us good to have a presidential election focused on what happened 4 years ago in January. And so I want to focus on looking forward. I don't want to look back. I do not want to see him. I hope he doesn't get charged. I don't think it'll be good for the country.
I love how he vaguely references what happened 4 years ago in January as if it was like a dinner date or something. You know what's bad for the country, Governor DeSantis? When Republicans refuse to call out the actions of someone who tried to overturn a Democratic election. Maybe South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, the supposed middle-of-the-road guy who's worked with Democrats before. Maybe he'll criticize Trump's attempted coup.
I hold the folks who broke into the Capitol with ill will in their hearts, destroying property, responsible for their actions. I don't hold the former president who didn't show up at the Capitol and threatened my life as responsible.
So it seems that nearly all of the serious contenders to take on Trump have basically made the political calculation that it's better to stand by him in the primary. But here's the thing. It is not working. Mike Pence might not even make the debate stage. DeSantis is still running 30 points behind in Iowa, despite betting big, according to his aides, on the Hawkeye state. And right now, Tim Scott is losing his own state of South Carolina by nearly 40 points. To be fair, it's not exactly working to attack Trump so far either. I mean, the never Trump candidates like Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson are polling in the single digits, well behind most of these Trump apologists. It may be that the electorate is too locked into Trump at this point, and we do have several months to go. But at least Hutchinson and Christie have clearly made the calculation that they won't be remembered as enablers by the history books. That's worth something. The rest of the field, though, is in a position where they are effectively enabling a guy who led an attempted coup. And for what? To maybe win a handful of delegates? I'm seriously asking you this. What are they trying to get out of this? Does Nikki Haley want to be the vice president that badly? Is Tim Scott hoping to be made Secretary of Commerce? What is it? Ron DeSantis just started his second term as governor. Don't even get me started on Mike Pence. I have absolutely no idea what he wants out of this. So what is the overall endgame here for all of these guys? And Nikki Haley, of course. Because right now, they are all on track to be a footnote in the history books, an asterisk in the also ran category, maybe an answer on Jeopardy on a good day. Nobody remembers the guy who got 2% in Iowa and dropped out shortly after. But they will remember the folks who put politics over country and refused to stand up for our democracy.